I'm going to kick us off and turn it over to, am I turning it over to Ruth or Dave?
Thanks, Kelly. Yeah,
Thank
Ruth
you.
is going to be on as soon as she can. It's that time of year session where there's meetings and legislative calls, so we're double teaming. So you're stuck with me. So hopefully that's okay. So, all right. I think I know. The big news so far has been the land use bill this week. So I think that we'll probably want to spend a good chunk of that. So if we want to start by going through just kind of the update on the other stuff and any questions that come up there, we'll try to move as fast and then give you all as much opportunity to talk about those bills or land use or any other thing that comes up. If that's okay, I'll suggest that as a agenda or pacing. So, all right. I don't see any much heartburn with that. So
we just got out of the CCAT all member call, and people are all over the place.
Yeah.
I think it's important, that I think I can safely speak for Broomfield that we're going to oppose unless amended. So we're going to be in conflict with CCAT.
Right. And and I think right now it's like, we'll jump right into that and just the political aspect of it there. It's like figuring out definitely need amendments and then figure out what is the best way to stay at the table for as long as possible. This is a big one. It's an incredibly big, not just the number of bills, but what it actually does and how it impacts everybody around. So. But let's just talk about some easy ones then. Affordable housing, rent control, no, all that. So, but we'll go ahead and go through the kind of category list if that's all right. Income aligned housing, House Bill 1190, right of first refusal. That's a priority level 1 support. Not much change since we last saw it. It's passed the House and is scheduled for Senate local government on Tuesday, April 11th. So we got a couple of weeks before it'll be in the Senate Committee of Reference. So looking good there so far. Next one on affordable housing construction defects, 1192. This is a opposed priority level 1. It had its Senate hearing yesterday. It was witness testimony only because the committee members and sponsors could not come to agreement on amendments. So it's been laid over for action at a later date. So there still continues to be work about, making adjustments to 1192. So any questions on that one before we move on? All right, excellent. Let's see, 1115, that is the prohibition on local residential rent control. Don't have a specific position on that, but it is something of note and interest that, especially with everything else going on, that has passed the House, still waiting to have its first Senate committee hearing. 1105, that's the Homeowner Association, a Metro District Homeowners Rights Task Force. That's a level 2 bill for the city and county, position of support. It is still waiting for an appropriations committee hearing. It has already passed the House committee. On that note, for most of the things that are waiting in appropriations, we'll know a lot more in the next couple of weeks about bills that do have fiscal impacts. The General Assembly and the Joint Budget Committee finished the long bill earlier this week. It is scheduled to be introduced into the Senate on Monday morning, and we'll go through the process to pass that. So basically all the Senate work will pretty much shut down next week as they work on passing the long appropriations bill. Then we'll start over again in the House the following week. So the first full week of April will be in the House. Once the long bill is passed, that's when the proverbial floodgates open. Every bill that's been stuck in appropriations, all the members start fighting for whatever's left in the pot for money, and leadership in both chambers starts prioritizing what bills the caucus that cost money will pass. So the Joint Budget Committee did set aside $30 million for non-budget bills. So each chamber will have $15 million to spend on the special bills. Some of the big issues, the Joint Budget Committee already did put placeholders for spending on those already. So like the land use bill that's supposedly going to have 15 million attached to it, I know, which is not enough. That was separate and put it as a placeholder in the budget already. So that doesn't count that, everybody free for all pot of money. So I just digress there a little bit. And then also added to your housing matrix just yesterday is Senate Bill 213, land use. It's been assigned to local gov. We'll talk more about that as we go through. Any questions on any of the housing bills before we move into transportation? All right, transportation, we got House Bill 1101. That's the ozone season transit grant program flexibility. City and county took a position of support level 2. It did sail through both the House and the Senate, but the one thing that did come up was that Senator Winter added an amendment about changing the transportation planning region boundaries and how those are set up. They went to committee, a conference committee, to work on that. Doesn't change the majority of the policy of what the bill was trying to do, but does touch on how those transportation planning regions are set up and those boundaries. We'll get you the committee report on that, see where it goes. The Senate and the House are set to concur on that, I believe, Friday. So if it doesn't get to it Friday, they'll pass it on Monday. So that's what we got for transportation right now. Any thoughts on that bill or transportation issues anybody might have questions on? All right, seeing none, we'll go to wildfire. Which one's on there? Senate Bill 166, the Wildfire Resiliency Code Board, WUI code. Support level 2. It has passed Senate local government, and Councilmember Lim testified on that. That was amazing. Thank you. And once again, going to the Senate Appropriations Committee. So same, kind of the same boat. All the other appropriations bills are in. Climate change, oil and gas. We do know that a lot of you and staff are in various meetings and various groups. Know that there is like a bunch of big concepts still hanging out there. We still do expect a number of climate change / oil and gas bills to drop in the next 6.5, almost 7 weeks left of session. One that came through since we last talked, that is Senate Bill 201. That's the force pooling bill. That's Senator Jaquez Lewis from Boulder County's bill. That has not had a committee hearing yet. It is in Senate Agriculture. City and County Broomfield has not taken an official position on that. So if you do want to do that, we can just let us know what it would be, and we can go from there. The one that we have taken a position on so far, that would be Senate Bill 16, the greenhouse gas emission reduction measures. Support level 1 as passed Senate Finance, is still waiting appropriations hearing in the Senate. Same boat as the other appropriation bills. Monitor bills so far, we've got the Senate Bill 198, the clean energy plans. That is Senate Transportation and Energy on April 5th. So that's the state verifying the clean energy plans to help achieve the greenhouse gas reduction targets. It's on the matrix. Senator Winter did mention that to you all during the dinner you had with her. So continue to monitor. If you have any questions or concerns, please let us know, and we'll relay any information back and forth as well. So, all right, 1069. That's another monitor study, biochar, plugging of oil and gas wells. That has passed House Energy, waiting a probe. Apparently, it has a very big fiscal note that the House sponsor, Karen McCormick, is attempting to address before any movement on that can happen. 1242, water conservation, oil and gas operations. That's the reporting on hydraulic fracking drillers. That is going to be heard in House Energy and Environment today, this afternoon. So we'll let you know how that turns out. Next in our bucket of policy issues, we got property tax. Senate Bill 108, that's the temporary reductions in property tax. That has passed the Senate, and then it will be going to the House Finance Committee next week, April 3rd. Also, the citizen-initiated ballot measure has been submitted, limitation on property tax increases. Another one of those, initiatives. It's kind of going to force the General Assembly and the governor to have to do something. We had CCAT had a legislative breakfast where the governor spoke. And he focused on two main things. First, the land use issue, and the second was the property tax issue. So we should also expect some big property tax legislation coming this year as well. So not sure if it's anything like the land use. I think plenty of people will be upset in many different stakeholder groups. And then let's see, public safety, gun violence, and car theft prevention. We took a level 2 support for motor vehicle theft, Senate Bill 97. That did pass the Senate, I believe, last week or late the week before, awaiting a House committee hearing. But that one's got some pretty good support on both sides of the aisle and both chambers. So we expect that to continue to sail on through. Gun violence prevention package. Last time we talked about maybe finding some place for increased education and training requirements. We had discussed with the had discussed with the proponents of the minimum age to purchase firearms that if there might be some room for that. They were, going to get back, but what happened with Senate Bill 169 is it ran into some serious opposition from rural Democrats in the Senate as well regarding hunting and licensing and being able to hunt as a minor with the mentor or your parents. It went through an incredible, significant strike below rewrite to address these concerns to ensure they could pass out of the Senate. So the proponents, unfortunately, were like, we had to lock down and cut our losses on that one. So, so didn't look like there's an opportunity on that. I do want to mention, though, there is on the Gun Violence Prevention Coalition, for the folks around that are dealing with these every year, there is some, I'd say, strong desire to get the state's Office of Gun Violence Prevention to do more. It was set up in 2020, given state money to do so. It's got to, but there's a lot of folks, stakeholders that have been part of that don't feel like the Office of Gun Violence Prevention has done anything. So I think that there's definitely some talk from many folks that they would like to get that office to do more. So, and maybe something would focus straight on that. Mayor Castriota.
Thanks, Dave. Well, since we obviously have gun violence prevention as a county priority, I'm curious as to why we're just monitoring the gun violence prevention legislation. We sent a letter to the governor's office and, the heads of both houses asking them to do more. So is this something that we need to decide as a council commission to take a formal position? Because right now we're just monitoring, y'all. Any input, any thoughts from my team? I'm looking at you, Austin, Devin, and James.
I guess I thought that when we sent the letter and voted on the letter, that meant we were supporting whatever bills were in legislature.
Fair. You guys,
Yeah, you're right. So I think that there was a sense that we supported the concepts, but not the actual bills that were introduced. I think that's the difference on this. I definitely put forward that the House Bill 23-1219. I think that is one that we can support. I think that the Senate Bill 23-169, that's very much in line with where we were going with our local ordinance. And then Senate Bill 23-170, this is one that I think that we can get around for sure. This wasn't necessarily directly in our letter, but this is one of those areas in which we've talked about that this is an area which needs to be strengthened. So I think that those three for sure. The gun violent victims access to judicial systems, I think that that's outside of where our letter was, and I think that deserves more conversation before at least I would put forward a support position on that. But those other three, I would definitely put forward a support position.
I would agree with Councilmember Schaaf on that. I mean, the 3-day waiting period, I wish it would have gone further, but I guess I'll take what we can get from the state. So I'm fine with supporting at least all the measures that were placed within our letter. Anything that's outside, yeah, I would agree with Councilmember Schaaf. We as a body need to have a more in-depth conversation. But I'm sure I would ultimately end up supporting those measures anyways.
Devin, did you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I did. It was kind of outside of that realm. So,
Oh,
so I
okay.
wanted to answer your question first, but looking at those, the gun violence prevention package, the lobby team approached proponents about an amendment to Senate Bill 23-169. And I don't necessarily think that that is the right area for that education and training requirement. It really kind of goes into that House Bill 23-1219. And I'm just curious why our lobby team thought it would be better to go into 169 instead.
Yeah, actually, well, so we actually talked to the proponents. It was, every town and all that on both of them, and brought both of those to it. And it said, because it was the kind of the original 169 also talked about education requirements and of what all that we'll take a look in that, and that's when everything kind of fell apart on that bill itself. So. But the other gun violence proponents, of which every town and Giffords and all those folks are, had also talked about, like, doing something specifically, maybe not this year, but specifically around the Office of Gun Violence Prevention. So
do you think that is where that was my initial thought, is that the gun violence and prevention office would be the one that's driving this training and education, really looking at what is needed, how to fund these programs, things like that. Do you think that there needs to be legislation to push that? Or do you think that that there has been enough kind of public pressure as well as kind of legislative pressure to actually get moving?
In my opinion, Councilmember Schaaf, is that it might take legislation, because I know, like, it's been in the last couple of years, it's been kind of a constant refrain from folks, even so much as that Senate Bill 170, the ERPO bill, is requiring the Office of Gun Violence Prevention to put out public education around red flag law, right? Just kind of like the feeling, it's like we are, something that the office should be doing already. We're not seeing any action on that, so that we're actually having to say that this is something that needs to be done in statute. So
do you think that there would be appetite from at least legislators or the bill sponsors to include some type of language in there that would require the Office of Gun Violence Prevention to conduct a study of education and training requirements and programs to facilitate that training and education in future years? Do you think something like that would be strong enough and push them into action?
I think so. I don't think that there's appetite from the House and Senate leadership to add that to any of the existing ones, given where it's at. But I think there is appetite from legislators and stakeholders to do something to make the office more effective. And I think that, given that that there's going to be continued action on gun violence prevention, that might be an actual spot that can have an actual spotlight pointed on it as the office, which could help just elevate education and training requirements and studies of that and all that, and kind of say, hey, we've had this office for a couple of years, and these are some of the things that they should be doing. So,
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, so on a procedural question, then we don't have our whole council here. Obviously, some are going to National League of Cities, some are on spring break vacation. And I don't know that if gun violence prevention is in our overarching city and county priorities. So do we need to get to a 2/3 majority? I'll ask Ms. Gilbert, our deputy city and county attorney. In order to take an official position, we do require a 2/3 majority of our group, which is 7. So since they're not here, do we have to wait and take that, just to be fair?
I think you do have to wait. And I was browsing over here the council procedures related to legislation. And while certainly those on the priority list, we can work with our lobbyists to move those forwards to take an official position that has to be done at a public meeting.
Okay. Y'all got that?
So Pat, do you need an email to set that up? Okay, I'll
Yes.
send that email out.
Thanks, Dave.
Yep.
Thanks, Dave. Please continue.
Of course. All right. And then, so those were the gun violence prevention bills, public safety bills. We had one priority bill, support level 2, public behavioral health. That's the school mental health assessments. That did end up passing the full House and has been, assigned to the Senate. So we'll see when that committee hearing is. That one does carry a bit of a fiscal note itself. I talked to Shannon Bird, the vice or the chair of this House Appropriation Committee, said that that's one where the Democratic caucus, both the Senate and the House, are very solid on the policy and they appreciate it. But it's going to come down to financial priorities. So we'll see more of that, where a lot of these bills end up in the next, I'd say, 3 or 4 weeks as they get through the long appropriation bill and then get to which they're jockeying for the leftover money.
Senator Winter actually discussed that with us when we had our meeting last week or 2 weeks ago, and she said the fiscal note was 15 million. Is it that high?
Yeah, so it's it's not as much this year, but it jumps up quite a bit in the out years. It goes from I think under $1 million this year to 3 million the next year, and then 15 million the next year. So it's quite a pretty big amount, but it's not right away. Yeah. So yeah.
I see our deputy public health director has her hand up. Deb.
Thanks, Mayor. I wanted to just chime in, and Dave, my understanding is that because of what you just said, the significant fiscal note, that the scope of the bill was narrowed during amendments to potentially help defray some of those costs by, limiting the program to one, I think schools would opt in, and then 2, having this needing to meet certain criteria, like you don't have a school-based health center, or based on Healthy Kids Colorado survey, your students in your catchment area are at a higher risk, and those types of things, to potentially scale it down a little bit to start off. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, and Deb, you are correct, and it's that thing. It's like, all right, so we can decide to do it, and then we'll run a bill in a couple of years to go to the original thing, and then we'll have the same issue. So, but no, you are correct. So I don't I don't see this one if it disappeared. I don't see this one going away because of policy issues. I think it would just be one of those kind of the behind the glass, as they say, looking at the budget spreadsheets overall, being like, all right, is this going to be another thing that are we going to have to run the same bill with the same fight with the same money? So I think those political considerations with that, I think that a lot of folks are on board with the policy.
James, you had your hand up?
Yeah, not necessarily specifically to this bill, but kind of the fiscal note. I was talking to Representative Tammy Story at CCAT last week, and she mentioned the large amount of anticipated TABOR refunds. And given the limited fiscal amount we have, have you heard any rumblings about trying to claw back some of that to keep those funds?
Always rumblings, but the viability of trying to keep them is pretty tough. Pretty tough politically, and the governor is not a huge fan of not getting those refunds sent out. So there's a couple hurdles there of like trying to message that the right way. It's like, hey, and then for the public, and then also for the governor. So I know that there's always spinning about what to do about being in a TABOR environment, but I haven't heard any strong rumblings of anything coming out, and I know that it's very kind of disjointed, in which there's not a locked in caucus on one solution. So
It just seems like if there's any issue that should be able to be messaged around that, it should be mental health of our students. So
I do not disagree, council member. All right, that's kind of what we got for our list of priority bills there. Just know that we did add land use and we added forced pooling, but now we've got about a half hour or so. You know, the floor is everybody's to discuss legislative matters. You've heard enough from me.
You want me to chair? Devin, go. You have the floor.
Thanks. So we added another bill, House Bill 23-1105. That's the Homeowners Association and Metro District Homeowners Rights Task Force. It looks like this passed out of committee unanimously with one amendment. I didn't know if this bill was on Aponte and Busam's radar, and if they know if that amendment, I mean, I read through it. I don't know if that amendment necessarily changed the direction of that bill significantly or not.
So I'm mute. Sorry, council member. It is on there, and I skipped over it because it was that just said it's still waiting for having its House Appropriations meeting. Do not believe. I'll go back and look at the amendment, see what's happened with it, and if the fiscal notes changed at all. But I don't believe it changed it significantly. So.
Okay, great. Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I think that I definitely think that we should talk about that land use bill. I know that many of us on here talked about that, for the last 2 hours, and not that we should continue that, but I think that we have to have more of a focused Broomfield conversation about this bill. We are doing, in my opinion, some really great things in Broomfield that solve the perceived problem that the governor is trying to solve. It tackles many of the goals, if not all of the goals that the governor is trying to solve. However, our solutions are very different. And I think that the solutions that we're coming up with are Broomfield focused and are coming out of Broomfield as opposed to coming out of the state. So I think that we have to look at that bill, at least through the lens my desire would be to look through the lens that this is a bill that's going to pass at some point, and it's going to pass in some fashion. And I think that we have got to bring forward our local ideas and Broomfield ideas to strengthen this bill and to ensure that this does not cause havoc on that great work that we're already doing. I think that this really goes to the idea of creating more density where single family zoning already exists. And really kind of gives the option that local property owners would have the ability to upzone that, without by right. They would have the ability to upzone that by right. And so, one of the suggestions that I had made to one of the governor's staff was the idea of saying within the TOCs, the transit oriented communities, there is an ability to sub-district that TOC. And I said, perhaps there needs to be that same kind of ability for local jurisdictions to subdivide up that single family housing zoning to say, here are the areas where we would prefer the higher densities, the sixplexes, the townhomes, the quadplexes, and these other areas where they are the triplexes and the duplexes, so that you're not creating just a mess in terms of your density within that existing single family zoning. So I think that there are some ways in which we can craft this to either get to the point where this isn't going to matter to us anyway, or that we can get to the point where this really provides the tools that we need to really achieve those goals in the best way possible for Broomfield.
A good point. I actually was thinking the same thing, and I see Sarah Grant is on the call. And I think one of the things that came up with the commissioners is how transit areas are defined, because there are transit corridors that don't get served right now, right? Where they cut the service. So that truly needs to be pointed out. Sarah, are you available to add some input on that?
No, I think you said it well, Mayor. We have to take that into consideration where we have density, where we have transit, and where we may not have transit in the future.
Thank you, because I did ask a very point blank question about funding the transit to go along with this transit oriented development push, and there is none. There is no funding. There's no plan to supply the transit needed, yet they're fine with restricting parking or not requiring parking without a plan to provide transit. To me, that just that it's hard for me to get behind, Dave. You know, you can't have a car, but we're not going to provide any public transit. We're just going to keep taking your money and subsidize Denver or whatever. So that's a huge, well, yeah, I think, were you on the CCAT call? Oh, were you, Cindy? Okay. It's definitely a conflict between what the county commissioners are pushing for and the reasons they want to support this, as opposed to the municipalities that would actually have the biggest impact, because we're the ones doing the building and the infrastructure and paying for it. So I see Jeff was Jeff here? Or there he is. Jeff, do you want to give me some thoughts from what you heard? Because I know you were on the CCAT meeting.
And Mayor, I can't give you a great deal of thought because I just printed up the bill at the 105 pages, and I was going to go through it over the next couple of days. I talked to Danae briefly and Jen before she left. We did a bunch of email exchanges. We're going to go through everything and try to figure out what our concerns are and questions are, because it comes from different factors. One is as you and Devin pointed out, the concern about transportation funding and that disconnect, as you point out, from a parking. We've always had this concern about ADUs and the fact of, while we think they're really important in the community and maybe a solution to some of our housing supply issues, you know, how they sit and that there's no parking required for that. When we don't have alleys in most of our communities. So first place is you have an access issue to the front door, as well as where do you park your car, or not park your car, park your bike. So there's just a number of things that I think we, the staff, are going to try to go through really quick and figure out those high level questions or high level concerns, and try to get those finished up early next week. Because we heard, I think all of us are on the call from the staff side, heard very clearly that the commissioners and you all that were on it today want to possibly amend it, but equally important, do it in a timely manner. So weekly calls and trying to get everything done within that short period of time, we're going to do our best, but you just got to give us a little bit of breath to just read the actual bill also, because we're going to look at it in pretty fine detail. And I would say both you and Councilmember Shaft raised the concern about the fiscal reality. I can tell you that Jay and Brenda and Jennifer, and I've been party to a little bit of the conversation. We're trying to understand that side of it too. As a member of one of the commissioners pointed out, was the change in assessed values. But at the same time, as Dave pointed out, Bill 108 could potentially change that fiscal reality too. So, you know, so if there's going to be tax reform or tax relief, okay, that's great, but then that may affect the cost side that we were raising. So all of this fits together. And as I sent a note to Danae just to let her know what was the result of that quick call, I just said the one good thing that we've gotten this week from a legislative or perhaps a state's perspective is the state has realized the 123 implementation probably is going to be more difficult and more complicated. And so they've created the 3-year relief on the 90 days. And we're trying to understand that. But at least that one, maybe they've realized they're a little bit in over their skis right now. And I'm just going to leave it there. So more to come from us. But I hope that answers your question, Mayor.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Romine. Jeff is our economic vitality director and economist. So it's not anything we don't all know because we're a pretty tight group. And we spent the last year with our new council going over the budget, going over what our limitations are so that we control our future by not getting too far over our skis and sticking with what we can afford. So then when you have this hammer coming at you from the governor, it's really hard because we plan, and this kind of upsets our apple cart because we're doing all the things. We've been doing all the things for years, and this feels like a hammer that's targeted at a certain number of communities that are anti-growth. Yet we're all getting grouped into this bucket of, we will fix it. So in terms of taking a position on this too, we would need the full, or does this fall under, I have no idea where this falls in our priorities. I mean, it's housing, but it's not advantageous housing. It's not, well, help me with this, y'all. Like where does this fit in terms of its local control? James?
James, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, better.
Okay. So, I mean, I did a quick glance over the summary of it, the actual bill last night. I plan on doing more of it this weekend, but I kind of want to go off what Eileen just said. I think that there's a lot of problems in a lot of communities that limit growth, and I think this is a heavy hand that we're already doing a lot of this stuff. And I can see a lot of our neighbors and residents being very upset about the use by right for apartments in any single family home zoning area. And I know that I was talking to a council member from another jurisdiction, and he mentioned that he kind of likes that because then, he has the excuse to allow it. So, but at the same time, I don't think this is something that it doesn't fit us. And I, the transportation lack of transportation funding is just, I don't know what they wanted to do with that. So that's my quick thought of it. And then there's the CML call on it next Wednesday that I'm going to be part of. I should get back from DC an hour or two before the call. So hopefully I'll be able to be on that.
I'll be joining it too.
Okay.
Austin?
Thank you, Eileen. I mean, like many of you have mentioned, this is really directed at other municipalities, Lakewood, Boulder, etc., who have far more restrictive policies and ordinances in place to really restrict housing growth. But I think overall, I personally am in support of a majority of what's in this bill. I have, just me personally, I don't have an issue with the use by right issue language. I mean, I hear the concerns about transportation. Obviously, I have always voiced those concerns. The state is not contributing the money they need to for public transit. But at the end of the day, I also look at this as we're going to have issues somewhere. Are we going to have it with the housing side where we continue to grow outward, which then means more vehicle miles traveled, more emissions, more wear and tear on roads, more to maintain? Or are we going to try and fix public transit in a way that we aren't doing right now? I just see it as you're taking one trade-off of a problem for another problems. I will be doing a further dive. I've glanced over all 105-6 pages of the document, but I will be doing a deeper dive this weekend. But those are my 2 cents.
Well, I think I should give people time to really go through this before we decide on an official position. It is still sitting in some people's inboxes, I'm sure, that didn't get a chance to read it. When I talked to Jennifer before she took off, she said that hopefully, and you can correct me if you need more time, Jeff, that we would have a kind of a summary of concerns by Friday, but that she didn't know. She was going to work on trying to get it by Friday.
You mean tomorrow?
Yeah.
Because we just, I think even when she was leaving, we still didn't have the bill.
Okay, well then that's not a realistic.
So what she had
Scratch that.
said, and Don's on, so maybe he knows, but what we had kind of gotten is if we could, just from that bill summary, that kind of snapshot that we saw that came through the day before, that if we could put some high level things, I think we're expressing those, but to get into specifics, I'm not sure. Don?
Thank you, Jeff. My interpretation of Jen's comments yesterday and so forth was next Friday. We need time to, it's got, I mean, the ink isn't even dry and we don't even know what ink will stick. So we need a chance to digest it, interpret it, understand it, and then, and not do it so soon in the process that we're wasting a bunch of staff time. So my understanding was more along the lines of next Friday, end of the month. Jeff and I don't know, I don't know if there's anybody else here that was there, but that was my understanding of what Jen was saying.
That could be me then. The next Friday makes more sense to me. So I heard Friday and okay, excellent.
Thank you, Mayor, for the grace.
Of course. No, I get it. I was reading it in bed last night on my phone, so tiny. And I was like, just getting mad. So it's good. We need time. We'll take the time. I see Devin and then Austin.
Yeah, so one of the things that was talked about in the CCAT meeting was the idea that the framework probably won't change, but how we enhance that framework. And I think that, understanding how the framework moves, I think that, that signals to me kind of the same work that was done in Senate Bill 181 with the oil and gas work. I believe that was 181. It's been a while. But looking at one of those pieces in there was cumulative impacts that at some point the commission had to deal with community impacts and they just kicked that off. But ultimately they had to do that because that was in the bill. And I think that that's some of the work that we have to do in here is really provide the direction for where these hearings and rulemakings are going to go along with this bill. And so that, we can get caught up in the use by right and things like that. But a lot of that stuff isn't necessarily in the bill. That's it's almost being predetermined. That's where these rulemakings are going to go. But I think that we need to really enhance that work. And that kind of goes towards what I believe what the governor was saying was the framework's not going to change. We're still going to have these rulemakings. We're still going to be doing this, but really enhancing and putting some real meat, putting some teeth in that. These are the pieces that the rulemaking body has to address. So those are definitely the places where I'm going to be looking to ensure that there's good language in this bill.
Thank you, Dee. Austin?
Yeah, I just wanted to throw in, I wish this legislation would have dropped at least a month ago. I think it would have allowed more time for both Broomfield as well as the rest of the state to work through it, for lack of a better term. And maybe try to be slightly more nuanced. I know there's issues with legislation when you try and get really, really nuanced. But I just wanted to throw that out there. I wish the governor had dropped this sooner, instead of trying to get it done within, well, practically a month left on the legislative session.
Good point. Jeff?
Yeah, I just wanted to build up on Councilmember Schaaf's comment, which was around the framework, and what we kind of just heard is that the framework may stay in place. what I heard, one of your commissioner colleagues, it's weird to say with you all being council members, but you know what I mean. One of your political colleagues was, could it be something like the STAR program? And for those of you who don't recall, the STAR program was something the state came out with during COVID that allowed each community to create kind of something that worked, that has fulfilled the goals of what the governor and the State Department of Health was trying to do. So we called ours Back to Business, if you recall, which was really the STAR program. And so we worked really closely with Deb and public health around how we put that together so that it fit both with the two criteria, which was trying to get businesses going and trying to keep public health. This may be the same path. I'm not suggesting, I don't have a solution here, but it may be that same path where we try to figure out how to get these multiple priorities all moving forward together. Because I think what I heard on that call today was there was a lot of support for different parts of the priorities, or perhaps holistically they were, but how do they fit together and how doesn't it become, we'll call it handcuffs or unintended consequences. So maybe that's the path to put in the back of our mind as we're thinking about it, is could we keep the framework but adjust it to more of that STAR approach where you're opting in a particular positive manner rather than the kind of unintended consequences negative manner. I'll stop there, but I just heard that as
Yeah, I think it was
comments.
Thomas Davidson that was trying to say, well, what if there was a way for counties that are cities that are doing all the things to exempt out of these draconian mandates, I guess, and like checking a box, have you done all these things? So to comply, it's worth exploring, but there's still things, in my opinion, that should be left up to the local land use, such as, zoning by right. That's just nuts on so many levels that it's a Pandora's box of, if people could just, any property owner can do whatever they want on their property in whatever zone. Yeah, you don't live here. You don't know how people are going to revolt. James?
Yeah, kind of going off of that, I just, one thing I would like to hopefully see, I was disappointed that it's such a heavy hand. I mean, if they can incentivize, these things and we're going to let you do these, like the box checking, you can do 1, 2, or 3, but you have to do one of them. I mean, something like that would, I think, be a lot more palatable than the heavy hand, you have to do it. Thinking about it though, I do think I do support density, as Austin was saying, and I do think that there is a little bit of a political, if it's mandated by the state and it's out of our hands, then, we get a little bit less pushback maybe from the local residents when people are building apartments in their single family lots. I don't know, that might be an advantage, but I guess we'll see.
You'll see, all right. They vote. Okay. Anyone else? Well, okay. I don't think I have anything else. I guess we need to go ahead, Ruth.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, sorry to be late, and I know you've been in Dave's good hands. I was on the CCAT call where many of you participated, and so we are really hearing the unique considerations for Broomfield on this land use issues, and I think your timeline of next Friday is realistic. I also think it'll help because it will have been informed by the CML meeting. I know CCAT's working to collect their thoughts and etc. The other organizations where you are at the table will be doing the same as we are, and we're with you 100% on this journey, and we hear that this is landing very differently for Broomfield than some other local governments across the state.
Thank you, Ruth. Well, I guess we're wrapped up then. We'll go dive in, and I thank our team so much for keeping us updated, and we'll also circle back on the support positions for the gun violence prevention legislation. Councilmember Schaaf just sent out an email to council to get that 2/3 majority consensus to formally take that position. So Devin's got the lead on that. Thank you. All right, yeah, we'll have a great afternoon. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, staff. Thank you, Ruth. Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, team.